There's a small problem amongst historians of the Roman army, and amongst self-styled military historians in general, regarding of all things basic military concepts. These matters are the sort of stuff that is absorbed by soldiers during and prior to initial entry training, not the sort of thing anyone would ever learn at an institution of higher learning, unless they were genuinely interested in the salient aspects of the military and the life it provides. This historian's lack of formal military institutional tradition calls into question the many comparisons they make between ancient army traditions and modern army traditions. I'm an old soldier with no formal training in historiography, and I, as implied earlier, often find myself disagreeing with some of the conclusions reached by stylish military historians. Simply put, there are things that just don't change regarding Army life. Many military traditions are deeply rooted in the practical-minded military considerations from an earlier epoch. This video is to the historians who've never lived the military life. Things can't get any more basic than this, or in the words of a wiser man than me, super jumbo Crayola style. Today we are covering the concept of a sand table. The name on the surface implies the use of both sand and a table. However, neither are required for a military sand table. The phrase sand table is used to describe a model that provides an operational overview, represents the terrain, highlights potential obstacles, and specifies the disposition of units and resources, both friendly and enemy. These things should sound familiar. Military historians and memorists write books and essays that deal with these very topics, often feeling compelled to write in order to correct a real or perceived error in another author's work. Thus, in a way, military historians and old veterans can be said to keep their own sand table of sorts inside their head and on their pages. To some of you, this is going to sound obvious, to others less so. Military historians, memorist veterans, and active duty soldiers have different objectives in mind when employing sand tables and rationalizing military operations. Regardless of the historical setting, my suspicion is that the majority of major operations that ended badly, such as Little Bighorn, Isla Wanda, Market Garden, Dien Bien Phu, among others, all had planners who either failed to even consider or at best did not properly employ a sand table. However, these individual battles and their relation to one another will have to wait for another time. The idea of a proper sand table has unfortunately fallen out of favor with the rise of the digital age. This is unfortunate because flat screens do a terrible job at representing terrain features. A scaled physical model will provide a stark illustration of any potential terrain hang-ups and allow the planning staff a fleeting chance to visualize themselves on the ground. During my own service time, a proper sand table was only brought out at the odd occasion, and in my opinion, these were not used to their full potential. However, the lack of proper planning and accurate modeling is not a new phenomenon, not even by a long shot. To the active duty soldier, one use of a sand table is to represent the operation that is yet to be. The model might be hurriedly cobbled together with found objects and represent movements like a football playbook. That would include all the three kinds of football. Or it may be modeled in exquisite detail. In any case, its purpose is simple: to inform the soldiers to be at this location, at this time, with this equipment. Oh, and expect this, that, and the other thing along the way. Get it? Got it? Good. A well-tended sand table is one form of mission rehearsal. The only better option is an all-up simulation of the mission. The other use of a sand table by active duty soldiers will be for evaluation and discussion during what is called an after-action review. Here soldiers will explain and excuse why they weren't where they were supposed to be, when they were supposed to be, with the equipment they were supposed to have. Military historians, by and large, do not see the historical record as a battle model. However, I assert that their copious and detailed documentation and notes can never represent an actual battle or engagement, and therefore the best battle interpretation they can achieve is a sand table representation. With a sand table, historians are free to pick up and move the troop formations as well as modify all the varied models of equipment and fix any errors in specifications, liveries, crews, locations, loadouts, and so on and so on. And why do I choose the specific term sand table? Short of recreating the battle, a sand table will be the most accurate representation of it. There's also a certain matter of an eminent military historian by the name of John Keegan. Perhaps you've heard of him. There's a very puzzling and disturbing remark he makes at the beginning of his famous book, The Face of Battle. The historian ought not be persuaded that because the course of battles fought 2,000 years apart in time can be represented in the same cartographic shorthand, the victor in each case was obeying, even if unwittingly, the rules of some universal higher logic of war. Keegan actually capitalizes the words higher logic and war. What could he possibly mean by the seemingly benign detail? It's a sort of intriguing detail that makes me wonder what Keegan's cadets said about him before the start of class. In my estimation, this remark is more or less the start of the so-called civil-military divide that currently plagues the Western militaries. Here was a civilian professor at a military service academy rubbishing the very idea that there was any value for his soldier students to study military history. Keegan projects his philosophical relativism onto his cadets, bluntly telling his charges that comparing battles was pointless and nothing of value could possibly be related from one to the next. Only an historian like Keegan could tell soldiers what a real battle was. Keegan continues, the historian will, or should, want to know a great deal more about many things: arms, equipment, logistics, morale, organization, current strategic assumptions. Keegan here seemingly not realizing that no amount of additional detail will lift him above history's sand table, and by extension its cartographic representation of the past battles in question. I can appreciate that Keegan is skeptical of general and staff officers and their memoirs. However, this skepticism does not by any stretch of the imagination grant Keegan or anybody else a freedom from cartographic shorthand, as he so bizarrely claims. Keegan is, in effect, declaring the rational battle narrative as the only true way to understand a fight. As a soldier, I'm here to tell you that this claim is patently false, and the evolution of Keegan's divisiveness has hurt the empirical, results-based institution that Keegan purported to support. If you can't tell already, I've also have a major problem with Keegan's Lord of the Rings notions of battle, but that will have to wait for another time. Military historians, when they are not shading the soldier's profession, they are adding to history's after-action review by painting in detail as more becomes known. But no matter how much these military historians may desire to avoid cartographic shorthand, they have no other choice. They, at their best, can do no better than a highly embellished sand table, which is nothing more than a physical representation of cartographic shorthand. So where does this reality leave battle veterans? Veterans have nothing but their military memories, military training, and military outlook when examining their experiences. The active military life having left no room for any meaningful growth outside the prescribed goals of the military organization itself. A favorite expression of my own service time was to characterize this state of being with the laconic, "Keep your nose close to the grindstone." Veterans who return to civilian life then are looking up from the grindstone, and in that time the world did not stand still. The political ideology that had sent the veteran into service and potentially into battle now something of a distant memory for the public at large. Thank you for your service. Military historians are rationalists. Military veterans are empiricists. The only place where veterans and military historians can hope to agree is on the layout of the sand table at history's after-action review. Both professions will walk away from history's sand table with different answers to different questions. The veteran simply wanting to know why the organization acted the way it did, the military historian pursuing their own ideological ends rooted in their political affiliations. What I wouldn't do to find someone who was both a soldier and a historian. Unfortunately, there is no SLA marshal for our modern age. And that's all we have time for today. This has been an independent production for YouTube by Goblin, February 2022. All rights reserved. I hope this was useful.